Government of India enterprise. Ma'am has vast background in policy making and governance, and which brings a unique perspective to consumer protection, and which I feel that is really honor for us to have understanding where, in terms of where the gap and implementation, where we can actually uplift in terms of consumer protection. So ma'am, we welcome you again on behalf of entire team of Consumer Advocacy Group and our Buddha Institute. So together, all experts, dynamic personality we have to actually will delve into critical themes of consumer advocacy, legislative protection, and policy to safeguards consumer interest. And we really thank you to all the principals, the directors, the lawyers, the students, and a few laymen also, like we tried to incorporate. And we also like to share that our institute in Gujarat, we are the first one to commence with consumer legal aid for the people. So we look forward for a stimulating exchange of ideas that will really inspire the actionable insights. And now further, let's begin with our very, very important session where we have invited our dynamic and resource person. So over to you, Anjali, Dr. Anjali. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, madam. It is truly a privilege to have the opportunity to learn from such an experienced and knowledgeable keynote speaker, Professor Suresh Misra sir, from Indian Institute of Public Administration, Delhi, to share his insights and experience. We are eagerly looking forward to hearing from him, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Please welcome, sir. Over to you.
Thank you. I thankful to Anand Law College for inviting me for this webinar. It's my pleasure to be here and to talk on consumer rights and awareness. But I really muster a lot of courage to talk in front of Professor Keshav Rao and Dr. Shri Gupta, well-known experts. They have done immense work in this area, and therefore they will be, I think, adding much more value than what I'll be doing. But I will just talk from what we have been doing, what is our experience, and to what extent we have the consumer awareness that is needed. As you know that we had the Consumer Protection Act of 1986, but with changes in time, globalization, expansion of information technology, the way business is conducted, and also the way the changes have taken place in the consumers themselves, in their own buying behaviors. The 86 Act was found to be inadequate, not able to provide a comprehensive protection to the consumers. And the working of the Act itself, especially the redressal agencies, was really so poor that there was a need to have a new legislation and provide for provisions for protection in the new environment that is there. Now, if you look at the 1986, we had the 6 rights. The 6th right was in 86 Act, it was consumer education. All the rights have been retained, but consumer education has been changed to consumer awareness. I think it is more important that we educate the consumers, which itself will create awareness. Unless you educate them with the required knowledge, skill, behavioral attitude that is needed, it's very difficult to talk of awareness. I don't know why they have changed it, and instead of consumer education, they have made it consumer awareness, but now that we have that. Awareness is only part of education. Unless you educate a person, you can't make him aware. That's what my take is. Enough information he should have so that he can be safe in the market. He can be aware of what purchases he is making. And also, what is the next step if things go wrong? He should have so much of information that he should be able to make a rational choice in the market and stay protected with the information that he has. So that there I think that there is no need to change from consumer education to consumer awareness, because consumer education is much more deeper than what consumer awareness is. Now you have a Central Consumer Protection Authority also that has been given the power to protect the 6 rights of the consumers. Therefore, not only the ministry and other agencies, but also the Central Consumer Protection Authority has a major role in creating consumer awareness, educating the consumers, ensuring that he's safe in the market, and various other things that are needed for him to be safe while making a purchase. If we further see the Consumer Protection Act of 2019, there are a lot of new features that have come, new changes that have come in the Act, which were not there. And the most important is that now consumer can file a complaint from the place where he resides. He need not go to the place from where the cause of action was. That will solve a lot of problem. And the provision for online filing and video conferencing, these things will help him so that he can file a complaint from his place of residence, and through video conferencing, he can argue his case. You also know the pecuniary jurisdiction has been enhanced. Earlier, it was the district forums commissions, they were up to 1 crore. And now it has again been reduced to 50 lakhs. And above 2 crores, it goes to the National Commission. With 1 crore, the pecuniary jurisdiction of the Consumer Commission, district level commission was very high, because we did a study for the ministry, and in fact the Supreme Court wanted to know the impact of the act that is there. And the study pointed out that if we keep the pecuniary jurisdiction of 10 crores and above for the National Commission, then within next 5 to 6 months, National Commission will not have any cases, complaints at all. Because this high pecuniary jurisdiction was something which was never anticipated, at least at the consumer level. So therefore, it was again brought down so that, number one, the district commissions are not really burdened, loaded with complaints. And secondly, a lot of new legal issues have come in the Consumer Protection Act of 2019, which may not be the Consumer Commission at the district level may not be able to address those technical issues. There has been an enormous delay in disposal of the complaints. Therefore, a single appeal the provision of single appeal is there now. Unlike earlier, a complaint at the district commission, which was earlier known as district forum, appeal would go to the state commission, From there, the appeal would go to the National Commission. And in some of the high-profile cases, the appeal used to go to the Supreme Court, which would take a number of years, which was not the purpose of the Consumer Protection Act. It promised quick disposal, summary disposal, and also the time frame of 3 months and 5 months if the product needed to be tested. So therefore, in the new context, to avoid delay, they have introduced this, that there will be a single appeal unless there is a substantial question of law. The second appeal will not be entertained. So that's good, something which has been done. Delay being a major issue, now they have also brought in mediation. And mediation has also started, but due to lack of infrastructure and other facilities, still in many of the commissions, it is at a very slow pace. The problem with mediation is that 50% has to be paid by both the parties. So 50% the consumer pays the fee for mediation, and the 50% is paid by the opposite party. It's interesting that when there were 3 cases, complaints for mediation at the Supreme Court level, and in one of the cases, the fee was 40,000. So 20,000 the consumer had to pay, 20,000 the opposite party had to pay. The consumer refused to pay. He said, no question of paying, I would contest. Now, if the fees is so high, why should the consumer pay? Why are we, he's already aggrieved, and we are still penalizing him because he himself is contesting the case. And therefore, the mediation did not take place. Now, if you look at the other aspects of the Consumer Protection Act, which are there, they're very interesting. You have the e-commerce now, very well defined. The power to regulate e-commerce lies with the Department of Consumer Affairs, which has already brought in a act. A guideline is also there. The act is also there, which regulates e-commerce. And e-commerce has to follow the same rules, regulations, procedures, processes, laws that are followed by the brick and mortar shops. So therefore, we have all these provisions. But the question is the consumer aware about these provisions? Is the consumer aware about Consumer Protection Act? Is the consumer aware about the existence of a regulatory mechanism known as Consumer Protection, Central Consumer Protection Authority for his benefit? To my mind, as far as my experience goes, he is not. So unless you create awareness among the consumers, you can have a number of laws which will not be effective, which will not result. With all the new provisions in the new Consumer Protection Act, there is no evidence to suggest that the number of complaints being filed in the district, in the commissions has gone up. There is no evidence to suggest that. So therefore, we have an act. The act is an enabling legislation. It covers a lot of good things that are required to protect a consumer. But the question is about its awareness, As far as the 1986 Act was concerned, we had done a very detailed comprehensive study. Even after 30 years of the Act being in existence, only 15 to 16% of the sample population knew that there is a Consumer Protection Act. And hardly 8% were aware about the 6 rights that were there. So now, this being the state of awareness of consumers about their own rights, it's very difficult to understand how they will benefit or make use of this legislation for their welfare. So therefore, we have to promote general awareness of the rights of the consumer by encouraging consumer education and supplying information, publish periodical and product-specific booklets, information material, pamphlets, cassettes, documentary films, and other devices of mass communication for promoting consumer awareness, not only in English and Hindi, but in all regional languages. If you remember that earlier, we used to have a lot of TV serials which were very educative, very useful. But of late, you don't find that. The approach is that we are using the social media. I don't know whether social media is really an effective tool to reach such a large audience, not with only information, but also educating them, convincing them why they need to make use of these rights and realize these rights. We also need to enlighten the business community of its ethical and legal obligations to maintain quality of the products and services and to be transparent in dealing with consumers. Now, we also have the provision of product liability, where now it is for the manufacturer, the seller, the producer to prove that his product is not defective or there's no problem in design that has caused hurt or injury to the consumer. So now, earlier the onus was on the consumer to prove, but now it is on the. Therefore, with the provision of product liability, it is expected that business will also improve its product, innovate its products, make it safe for the consumer, and ensure that consumer gets the best value for his money. The other thing is that somehow we find that during this period, there's not much encouragement or interaction with the consumer groups. If you look at the Consumer Protection Act, both of 86 and 2019, the acts recognize the role of consumer voluntary groups, where they, as one of the complainants, they are there, they can file a complaint on behalf of the consumer on their own behalf. So therefore, the Act itself has recognized their importance, and consumer awareness down to the grassroots level can only be taken by the consumer groups, consumer advocacy groups, consumer activists who have been doing enormous work in this area. So if you don't involve these consumer groups, rest assured, government reach is very limited. I think the government has to partner with the consumer groups to ensure that. Now, the tragedy is that the Consumer Welfare Fund, which is there, it has also been created in almost all the states with the central funding. That is not being utilized for consumer welfare activities. In fact, the fund is not at all being utilized so far. So you don't expect that consumer awareness will come simply by putting it as a right in the Consumer Act. So therefore, there is a need to bring the consumer groups, traders, policymakers to exchange information on mutual respect for better cooperation, bring together the NGOs, activists in different areas as they have the local information, they know what are the local problems, and they also know that what needs to be done much more than what the government knows, because they are working in the local areas. So therefore, they need to be equipped with suitable required information and knowledge to enable them to act as noble agents of change in rural areas. Don't forget that bulk of our population lives in the rural areas. So also bulk of our consumers live in the rural areas. There's enormous exploitation of the consumers in the rural areas, right from food adulteration to violation of their basic consumer rights. The mechanism for redressal itself is far beyond them. They're not able to reach. So therefore, we need to build the capacity of the voluntary consumer organizations so that they can take the movement forward. Then the other important thing is that there is a need to establish links with education institutions like universities, colleges, high schools to emphasize the need for improving consumer education in the curriculum. I'm sure, if I'm not wrong, when Madam Jashri Gupta was the Joint Secretary in the Department of Consumer Affairs, they had tried to expand the scope and reach of the department by partnership with various organizations. Many of the universities, they had set up chairs. They funded many of the institutions. We also had a scheme of consumer clubs where a large number of schools were involved. And we have evaluated those schools where you had the consumer clubs were set up. And the results have shown that wherever there was a consumer club, there was a higher awareness among the people in that area, because these schools would be very active in spreading the awareness, taking out rallies, various activities associating the local community also. So it was a good scheme that touched upon not only young students, but also others. So therefore, you need to partner with these schools and others. We also used to fund a lot of seminars, conferences, workshops in the universities and colleges under our activities of the Center for Consumer Studies, which was set up by the Department of Consumer Affairs. And I'm sure that Professor Kesha Rao will also agree that we did 2-3 programs in Vizag also when he was there. It had a lot of impact, not only on the students, but also teachers. And slowly, a lot of universities started working on this area of consumer protection, but even UGC recognized the emerging thrust of consumer protection, and they set up a committee to make a module which can be used by all the universities so that there is a consumer education and awareness is enhanced. So therefore, consistent effort needs to be made to interact with various organizations, various groups, so that the awareness can be enhanced to a much larger scale. On itself, it is very difficult that you will have. Social media can be one of the ways you can use it, but you need to carpet bomb the whole thing so that the consumers are best is to catch the university and college students who are the bulk of consumers in this country. So therefore, you need educational campaigns through various channels to disseminate information and consumer rights, safe products, and above all, responsible consumption. We also need to ensure that responsible consumption is promoted. Organization of workshops, seminars to provide in-depth knowledge about specific consumer-related issues such as product safety, labeling, legal rights. Product labeling and information is very important. In fact, if you look at the West, product label reading is something which is so common, everybody does it. Even when we buy a product, we don't read the label, and therefore the chances of getting cheated are much more. Therefore, I think that it has to be a collaborative effort of involving various stakeholders in the consumer movement, and only then you can strengthen. The Consumer Welfare Fund should be used to educate various sections of the society, focus more on institutions of like college and universities, so that the task becomes easier for the government. It is able to reach the intended consumers, and we should also ensure that there is a policy for this. The tragedy is that we don't have a consumer policy in the country at all. A draft policy was made long back. It was put up on the website, but then it was withdrawn for reasons best known why it was not to be put there. So unless you have a consumer policy which gives a blueprint of how do you strengthen consumer movement in the country, it's very difficult, Otherwise, you have just hit and run programs, not really a structured roadmap for which the organizations continue to work. So therefore, a consumer policy should cover legal framework, empowerment of consumers through education and awareness, enforcement framework for legislation, providing rights to consumer and mechanism for resolution of disputes. Empowering consumer has to be at the heart of an effective consumer policy. So consumer empowerment has to be the major thrust area of the consumer policy, The roadmap has to be there. How do you empower consumers? You have various service providers, even though the government continues to be the sole major service provider in the country. Many of the consumer government services are free. And therefore, as per the Consumer Protection Act, you cannot go to the consumer commissions because those services are free, even though the quality is bad. So I think there is the consumer policy should also look at some of these issues. Even there is a dispute now whether education is a service or not. There were conflicting orders and judgments by the National Commission and the Supreme Court. And finally, the Supreme Court has taken over itself to decide whether education is a service or not. And it's more than 6-7 months that it is pending final Supreme Court judgment. So therefore, if we go on giving exemptions, the advocates have been given exemptions. It is not a service, it's a professional fee. So what about a doctor? What about an architect? Is it not a professional fee? So I think these are some of the things that needs a clarity. And consumer policy should address these issues, should give a roadmap of how do we go about, how do you use the consumer welfare fund, which are the organizations that need to be involved, how do you partner with voluntary organizations which have an important role in this sector. And apart from that, the policy should also talk about consumer responsibilities. We only talk about consumer rights, but what about consumer responsibilities? Especially when there's a thrust on sustainable consumption, sustainable development, sustainable lifestyle. These are the issues. I think it has to also clearly draw what is the implementation strategy in the terms of internal dispute resolution mechanism for all manufacturers and service providers. How do you strengthen that mechanism? How do you ensure that if a consumer is aggrieved and he lodges a complaint, he gets the relief that the manufacturer has to provide for? Use legislation for enforcement of the consumer rights. Ensure better harmonization of standards, national and international, to promote better choices. There are a lot of substandard products in the country, in the market, that are available today. Some of them are dangerous. Some of them don't meet their required standards. The Central Consumer Protection Authority has taken note of some of these things, especially the pressure cookers of non-ISI mark. But then it's a huge market. Unless you have a policy that talks about it and everybody knows what it means, it may not be of much use to the consumer, because you may have few complaints and then you address to those. The other major problem that the policy should talk about is effective complaint redressal mechanism. Since the framing of the Consumer Protection Act 1986, the less said, the better it is about the performance of these commissions. Lot of effort has been made, but the problem still remains with the quality of people who are manning these. So therefore, there has to, in spite of various recommendations, nothing much has really happened at the ground level. So unless we strengthen these three-tier redressal agencies, there's not much that will inspire the consumers. The Act promises 3 months, but on an average, it takes 3.5 years for redressal. While the consumer says that, well, you told me it is very cheap, it is very inexpensive, but it takes so much of time. So these are some of the issues that I wanted to highlight as far as the awareness is concerned, as far as the need for a consumer policy is concerned. So I would end here with the concluding remark that we need a consumer policy that will take into account and give a blueprint of how do you take forward the consumer movement, how do you strengthen the consumer movement, what are the steps needed to educate the consumer and create awareness so that he's safe in the market. So thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. Since my network was not very good, I did not switch on the video, but I hope that I've been able to share something that was relevant. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your views, and I think it will be helpful in our near future. Thank you so much once again. To continue our journey of learning, I have honor of inviting Dr. Jayashree Gupta ma'am, former Additional Secretary Government of India, Delhi. It is indeed great honor and privilege to learn from such an esteemed guest. So please, ma'am, I welcome you. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Rekhaji, for giving me this opportunity to interact with all of you. I have a presentation. Can I share it?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Select a tab to share. I just, I think.
Can I help you, ma'am? You just go to the third icon, present now, from right side, third icon.
Yeah, but I think I am stuck somewhere.
Can you share mail, ma'am, to us? PPT, if you can share with Sir, Murthy Sir, if you can share, we will get it and we will share it, ma'am, from our side.
Entire screen.
Yes, ma'am, entire screen and then just click it. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you see it?
No, ma'am, not.
Yes.
No. I'll just 1 minute. Which screen? No. This is a presentation which I want to share. Yes. इसको बंद कर दे. Just give me a minute. I'm taking help from my kids.
Okay, no issues. No
Yeah,
issues.
it's not showing.
Have you given us screen sharing rights?
Uh, Hello, Murthy
Uh,
sir.
Hello. Do we have screen sharing right?
Ma'am, Rekha ma'am.
Yes,
Do we
ma'am.
have screen sharing right? Do we have, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You have, ma'am.
Yeah.
But there is no option for sharing screen. Are we clicking on the document?
Okay, just a minute. Just a minute.
How do we get out of this?
You will know better.
And just give us 1 minute. We are giving, ma'am. Just a minute, ma'am.
See,
Okay.
but how do we get out of the screen now? Okay, it's gone.
Shri Madam, please forward the PPT to me,
Okay.
please, because
That
it
will,
is involving some delay.
okay, just 1 minute. Let me see.
Ma'am, we have given rights to everyone. Anyone can share, ma'am.
Yeah.
This, yeah. Yes.
Let's try again.
Eh? No, it's not coming. अंशुल को बुलाए.
Yeah, it's not working.
It's working?
No, it's not working.
It's not working.
Ma'am, you share with Murthy sir, ma'am. We will do it from our end, ma'am.
1 second. Yeah, okay, just email it to her.
Compose. इसको minimize कैसे करोगे?
Shri Madam,
Yeah, I'm just trying to do that.
can we ask the next speaker to make his speech so that you can...
I think I should skip my presentation and just talk like Professor.
Okay, whatever you wish to.
Yeah, so-
Whatever you wish to.
Yeah, so
Because we have limited time, it's already 4
yes,
and all.
yes, I can see. Yeah, because if we try to do that, that would be difficult. So okay, okay. What I will have to do is I will have to look at my presentation. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
You can hear me. So I will also switch off my video, and I hope you can hear me.
Yes, ma'am.
So yeah. So Consumers India, which I am heading, is an organization which was set up by former officers of Department of Consumer Affairs in Government of India. And we felt so passionate about it that we tried to make it our lifelong commitment. And we have taken up vast range of issues. Research and advocacy, these two are our major planks. We are talking about consumer policy. So my feeling is that if someone wants to do it, one can do it, but it's not really important because this will only remain on the website of the Government of India as a guidance document which nobody will see or follow. What we have is an action document in Consumer Protection Act 2019. It starts with words like an act to provide for protection of the interests of consumers and for the said purpose to establish authorities for timely and effective administration and settlement of consumers' disputes and for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. What better policy statement do we need? So I personally feel the need of the hour is to implement those provisions, because the new Consumer Protection Act is very powerful. It is at par with the best in the world in terms of policy documents. So we have a Central Consumer Protection Authority, which combines the best features of Federal Trade Commission and Product Safety Commission of USA, and it can take action to proactively safeguard consumers from the menace of misleading advertising and other unethical and unfair trade practices. It has provided authorities the power to recall goods. There are penalties for endorsers of misleading ads. There are penalties for adulterated and spurious products. E-commerce has been included in the Act. Product liability has been included in the Act. Mediation, online filing, and many more consumer-friendly provisions. So let me not go into 6 rights, which everyone knows. As per Consumer Protection Act, we have 6 statutory rights: safety, rights to safety, be informed. Right to choose, I feel, is very important right. And same is true of consumer education. We are a consumer if we have paid for a product or a service, but there are, many issues are still being debated at the highest level. As pointed out by Professor Sureshi. So the new act, I personally feel, is a welcome change. It's a clear shift in principle from buyer beware to seller beware. And at least on paper, consumer is king. We have consumer forums, now called consumer commissions, across the length and width of the country. Every district has a district commission and so on. But let's see the ground realities. The Act mandates disposal within 90 days as far as possible, and 150 days where testing, etc. is required. But in spite of these provisions, quest for justice consumes a lifetime. As in September 23, we had 5.45 lakh pending cases. Our reality check visits to different state commissions and district commissions indicate that in a state commission of Uttar Pradesh, which I personally visited in February 24, less than 1% cases have been disposed within time norms. In State Commission of Srinagar and District Commission of J&K, State Commission of J&K and District Commission at Srinagar, which again, I'm talking from my personal visits during last 1 year. Not a single case has been disposed within the prescribed time norms. In District Commission number 2 of Indore, less than 5%. And so on. This is the reality of the entire country. One of the important provisions is e-Dakhil, online filing. So it has started at a very low key. In a state commission of UP, we found that only 29 cases have been filed through e-Dakhil till January 24. And even after e-filing, What is the use of e-filing if you have to go there, waste your time? But that's what is happening. Hearing takes place in physical form. Disposal of cases through mediation is yet to take off. Majority of cases are still being represented through advocates. So it's no longer a simple act which you as a consumer, this is what it was intended to be, but it's not in actual practice. Just one, there are many landmark judgments, but one landmark judgment I'm quoting that Supreme Court had ruled that a doctor can be held liable under Consumer Protection Act for deficiency of service. Though Supreme Court itself has said that this judgment needs to be reviewed now. In a landmark case, wife of US Dr. Kunal Saha died in 1998, due to negligence of doctors in Calcutta. And they went to consumer commissions, and after fighting for 15 long years, Supreme Court offered them compensation of 6 crore rupees. But the journey took 15 years. So it said justice delayed is justice denied. I've also tried to make an analysis of are the powers vested in consumer commissions being utilized. Consumer commissions have power to grant punitive damages, including withdrawal of hazardous goods from being offered for sale, and to seize manufacture of hazardous goods. Their power to order corrective ad in the case of misleading ads. There are penalties for endorsers of misleading ads, including celebrities, and power to recall goods, power, product liability, etc., etc. From my personal visit to Indore, District Commission Indore, I'm giving one example. A consumer bought a new mobile phone for 10,999. Let's call it 11,000. And it got blasted while charging just 1 month after purchase. It was under warranty, but company quoted 12,000 as repair charge. So he went to Consumer Commission, and after fighting for 5 years, what does the Consumer Commission say? They accepted that it's company's fault, but they ordered the cost of the mobile, that is 11,000, plus 3,000 for mental harassment, plus 3,000 to meet the cost of litigation. Now, this was a fit case for imposition of hefty punitive damages to the company, including withdrawal of all such mobile phones, because the company would not make one faulty telephone, and the entire batch must be faulty. What happened in USA? It was in news, maybe all of you would be aware. Johnson & Johnson has reached a deal. They'll be paying $8.9 billion in their baby powder talc settlement, because many of the users got cancer after using this baby powder for years. Our study also showed that most of the talcum powders have starch and asbestos, which are carcinogenic, but no action. Well, our study shows that most of the cosmetics have non-veg ingredients and they are not declared. For example, even the color on lipstick is derived from cochineal dye. They kill a small insect, which is generally, in South America, it feeds on cactus plants to get that vibrant red color. But Will vegans like to file a product liability case? Even if they do, we don't anticipate any much action. In the case of misleading ad, what happened in USA? In USA, they imposed a fine of 25 million US dollars on Reebok shoes for their shoe brand claiming better legs and better butt with every step. And similar ads continued misleading consumers in India unabated. So here it's not the lack of policy, we have an act which exhorts us to act, but we are not. So we have CCPA and they have been issuing guidelines after guidelines. There are guidelines about misleading ads, about due diligence for celebrities, about surrogate advertising, which is banned, etc., etc. There are guidelines, rules, regulations for e-commerce. But have you ever seen a celebrity being punished for endorsement? We still have Amitabh Bachchan and Shah Rukh Khan and everyone promoting gutka and liquor. So, as per Act, celebrities can be fined up to 10 lakh for the first offense, and they can be prohibited from making any endorsement for a period of 1 year, and it goes up substantially up for the second offense. But you see, we are all familiar with the Patanjali case, which Supreme Court, which went through Supreme Court hearing for months, and it demonstrates the inaction on the part of all regulatory authorities. So our problem is inaction. You all must have seen the ad of Dr. Ortho, which claims, that you use Dr. Ortho and your pain will vanish, joint pain will vanish. But our study shows that majority don't find it effective. You might have seen Kareena Kapoor endorsing nutrition in every sip, real juice. There is no real juice in real juice. So it's full of sugar and preservatives and harmful ingredients, and no action either on the celebrity or on the company. It goes on. So our studies show that consumer awareness is increasing. Of course, our studies are based on secondary data and primary survey, which is done through online Google Forms generally. 75% or more of the responses are online. So it's aware consumer, enlightened people. So even amongst them, the situation is that 74% are aware of consumer rights, but only 28% of them, of the deceived, take some action to either get the product replaced or seek redressal through a consumer forum. We have mandatory BIS certification for toys as a safety measure, very good. Our study showed that 69% consider safety as an important quality in a toy, but only 21% read the safety manual. Also, though 60% faced safety issues with toys, only 3%, mark it, only 3%, took some initiative to file a complaint. So awareness is not translating into action. So our major concerns are lack of action by people who matter, Central Consumer Protection Authority. In spite of it, celebrities continue endorsing harmful products. Power to recall goods or product liability remains on paper. Online filing, lukewarm implementation, punitive damages, withdrawal of hazardous goods remain on paper. Civil servants, under the Act, they have been vested with the onerous responsibility of proactively safeguarding and promoting consumers. They are blissfully unaware of their role. My personal discussion with many district collectors showed that they are totally unaware of their responsibilities towards consumers. Though they are supposed to be chairman of the District Consumer Protection Council, but they have either not been set up or they are inoperative. So it's time that we become smart consumers. Prevention is better than cure. And more and more educational institutions should come forward. They should set up consumer clubs on their own. And we do, on our part, we have tried to catalyze youth through our internship program. We have done 219 research studies under our internship program on different consumer products and services. And we have also organized 84 programs in collaboration with leading organizations like India International Center and India Habitat Center, where we have distinguished personalities as panelists who share their wisdom with the audience. But we need more organizations which do that, and more institutional, and we also need to train our, presidents of National Commission, members of National Commission, chairman of CCPA, chairperson of CCPA, state commissions, everyone working in district commissions, to not only be aware of their powers, but to exercise those powers. So that, I think, is the need of the hour. And again, I can give you some more examples. Many people go for cosmetic surgery and they get duped. There have been cases of many people dying because of cosmetic surgeries done by untrained, unqualified persons. Sometimes technicians also develop as cosmetic surgeons. They advertise themselves as cosmetic surgeons. Beauty parlors, they do lots of procedures, and hair transplant and other things. So we have National Medical Commission. They issued comprehensive guidelines. I think it has been more than a year when they issued those guidelines, but nothing changes on the ground. So what we require is that those policies which are made, acts which are enacted, authorities which are authorized to safeguard rights of consumers, they act. That is the need of the hour. Even now we have, as per WHO, 57% of our doctors are fake or unqualified. Delhi alone has 40,000 quacks. Just imagine the plight of people. So if we are aware of our consumer rights, we can not only save ourselves, but we can also save everyone else. And consumer has to be aware. Consumer awareness needs to be enhanced. There is no doubt about it. But more important than consumer awareness is awareness about the need to act on the part of authorities which are vested with the power to safeguard interests of large number of consumers. Consumer awareness will increase if our district commissions order withdrawal of, let's say, I gave that example of mobile phone. Had they ordered withdrawal of all those mobile phones, it would have really, caught headlines, and everyone would have been aware of that. So that is one easy way of reaching out to masses, that people in power who are supposed to exercise their powers, they use their powers. Because policy document is a document which remains on the website. Act is a document which has to be acted on. So we have National Medical Commission Act. They are supposed to save us from fake doctors and from fake or substandard practices. But nothing much is happening on the ground. So my call to everyone is that let's forget about policy. Let's focus on implementation. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing wonderful your insights, and I'm sure that this will be helpful to our student also. So once again, thank you so much, ma'am. So moving further, it is truly a privilege to have the opportunity to learn from such an experienced and knowledgeable keynote speaker, Professor V. Kesava Rao, sir, who is former Vice Chancellor of National Law University, Ranchi and Visakhapatnam. So I invite sir to grace us with his knowledge. Please, sir. Kesava, sir. Due to some important work, he is going to join within a minute. So we will wait for him.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Once again, welcome, sir.
No, just now the net gone. So I
It's
went
okay.
out,
It's
joined
okay.
again.
It's okay, sir. No problem. So I invite you to grace us with, sir. So over to
Okay,
you, sir.
I'm because of the net connectivity, I'll be only speaking. I'll not be visible.
Okay, sir. No issue.
No worries, sir. No worries, sir.
Okay. I think I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Professor Suresh Mishra G from IIPA, Dr. Shri Gupta, former Additional Secretary, Government of India, Dr. PVS Murthy, Faculty Management Studies, Acharya Nagarjuna University, Dr. Amit Kumar Parmar, Director, Anand Law College, and the convener of this webinar, Dr. Rekha Kumari, officiating principal, Anand College of Legal Studies and co-convener for the Consumer Rights and Awareness webinar, organized in coordination with Consumer Advocacy Group by Anand Law College and Anand College of Legal Studies, faculty members, advocates, students, and everybody else that is participating online, a very good evening. Well, I deem it a privilege to partake in this webinar, and it's an opportunity to share my thoughts on the topic and learn from the different perspectives. Administrative perspective from Dr. Shri Gupta, academic perspective from Professor Suresh Mishra, and activist perspective from Dr. PVS Murthy. Such heterogeneous resource persons participating in webinar is rare, and they contribute to the holistic views on the topic. My sincere compliments to the trio organizers, ALC, ACLS, and CAG. This webinar topic has twin elements. One is consumer rights and other is consumer awareness. And Dr. Murthy added a third dimension, policy orientation. Let me see what best I can do, because a speaker that is speaking last will always have a disadvantage and will always have an advantage that he need not speak his entire time. A disadvantage is most of the points which he wished to cover must have already been covered. Keeping that reservation, consumer rights are now enshrined in the Consumer Protection Act 2019. I call it COPRA. COPRA is the Consumer Protection Act. The preamble to the Consumer Protection Act, COPRA, simply states that it aims at protection of interests of consumers, not the rights of consumers. Right is a broad word, interest is a narrow word. Therefore, the Consumer Protection Act is mainly concerned with certain interests which it seeks to protect and to establish authorities for timely and effective administration of the statute and settlement of consumer disputes, because the interest of the consumer is not fulfilled when he makes a commercial transaction. Why the word rights are not made part of the preamble, and why deliberately the interests of the consumers is used, is undoubtedly a point to be dealt into. Well, before I deal with it, there are 6 important rights which are contained in the Consumer Protection Act. One is safety, right to information, right to choice and fair price. Number 4, right to make representation. Number 5, right to redress. And number 6, awareness, right to education. But if you look at the world jurisprudence, as evidenced by the international concerns in several conventions and guidelines, we come across 3 more rights. Right to access to necessary goods and services, they are called right to basic needs. Right to sustainability of economy and consumption. Right to healthy and sustainable environment, that is health. These 3 rights, which are now part of the UN guidelines, do not find a place in the COPRA. Of course, they find a place as part of the human rights, and probably the first one, the right to basic needs, I sincerely feel should have found its place in the listed rights as contained in the Consumer Protection Act. Now, to enforce these rights, there is a vast difference between law in books and law in action, as already pointed out by Madam Shri. She has given us sufficient examples to say that despite there is a statutory regulation, the violation goes unabated. Now, to enforce these rights, in fact, 3 beautiful expressions have been used: to protect, to promote, and to enforce rights and prevent the violation of them. Besides, to prevent unfair trade practices and misleading advertisements, there is one authority created called CCPA, Central Consumer Protection Authority. Well, if you go through the provisions of the Consumer Protection Act, he is all powerful. That authority is all powerful because the entire enforceability of the statute was on his shoulders. When an authority is given so much responsibility coupled with power, without the necessary administrative and financial backup, then definitely the implementation of the laudable rights that are enshrined in the COPRA remain on paper. which results in the consumer problems called consumer disputes, and naturally he will go to the consumer fora for settlement of them. In fact, consumer problems which are being faced today are not new. 3,500 years ago, there was a consumer code on food matters. Thou shalt not poison thy neighbor's fat, meaning food should be safe and wholesome. Thou shalt not bewitch thy neighbor's fat. You should not mislead or cheat. Now, as far as the food products are concerned, well, I am definitely sure that it is not the case. There are, unfortunately, foods which is being sold despite it being adulterated and contaminated. And in case of misleading, well, India, anybody can say anything and get away without any responsibility because there is no duty to speak truth. My PhD is on misleading advertisements, and only thing I discovered was there is no duty to speak truth. Only regulation of advertisements is there, and most of the times an individual will not be able to take up, despite his busy other works, the cause of a misleading advertisement and go to the court. Therefore, probably the consumer organizations or the consumer movements have taken up. It was started by one individual, that is called the crusading stage. From there, when many people have joined, it became a popular movement stage. And from then, it got itself into an organizational setup, the organization stage. And now, whether it is wise or otherwise, I don't know. I leave it to the wisdom of the people that are entrusted with the responsibility of enforcing the statute, the bureaucracy stage. The entire responsibility has been taken away by the bureaucracy, and the purpose of Consumer Protection Act is not only to provide a few remedies for certain discrepancies that are found in a commercial transaction, but to empower the authorities that are established and created and constituted under the Consumer Protection Act. What is it a consumer requires if the right is violated? Madam has said there is a shift from buyer beware to seller beware. Yes, undoubtedly there is a shift. It is undoubtedly a plus point and a marked shift to protect the interest of the consumer. When something happens which is countenanced by the COPRA, then consumer expects that he must be able to make a representation about the unfortunate thing that happened to him. And he expects a legislation to come to his rescue. And then he expects that he is properly educated about his rights, his duties, and the course of action he has to take whenever a product that is purchased by him or a service that is availed by him is found to be defective or deficiency. This is where the consumer policy comes into picture. In fact, any legislation is made only to implement a policy. Policy is independent, legislation is independent. Horse can never be put, has to be always put before the cart, and cart can never be put before the horse. And a preamble to a statute cannot be equated with a policy statement. Because a policy statement is a visionary statement, a missionary statement, clearly pointing out the objectives at long range as well as short range in one sentence. And it must have a reflection in the global scenario. Well, unfortunately, the preamble to COPRA doesn't have any of these features, Like any other preamble of any other statute, it simply laid down what is expected from, or what is the purpose behind, what is the object of passing this Consumer Protection Act of 2019. However, we should all feel happy with because the Consumer Protection Act is three-dimensional. It dealt with three major ills that are found in the society in a commercial transaction. The goods purchased may be defective goods. The services rendered may be deficient, and the promotion of goods and services may be deceitful. All the three start with D: defect, deficiency, and deceit. Now, when any of these three happen, there is a mechanism given, a procedure given, a process is given for enforcing those rights, or the rights arising out of those deficiencies. Well, it was said the purpose is to give a timely and effective remedy. Now, as stated by the two predecessor speakers, never the complaint that goes to consumer court gets decided within time. And now with the introduction of the mediation, well, I'm sure it is becoming much more complicated. Probably it is even becoming more costly. Now, in this case, deceit, as stated in the unfair trade practices, which was there even in the 1986 COPRA, the 2019 Act incorporated it, but it went ahead. Definitely a positive step, that it gave a definition of advertisement, it gave a definition of misleading advertisement, and it also gave a definition of endorsement. What we find in ads today, beautiful sentence which has no meaning, which is the captive line or the caption of the entire advertisement. The soap washes whiter than whitest. I don't know what is meant by whiter than whitest. And then there is a beautiful video ad which shows the face, not very fair. But after 1 week, slowly the face turns, and the face on the seventh day becomes absolutely fair. Well, I thought it's only meant for females. But then I'm surprised to see that there is a similar tool for men also. Well, in fact, I sincerely tried to change the complexion of my skin. I am little brown. I thought I can become little white. Despite my sincere use, probably certain colors are not changeable. I lost my money, but I have not found any change in the color. Not only these, there are umpteen number of examples that can be given. Press ads, ads in Doordarshan, ads in radio, ads in magazines, ads in newspapers. Well, they are just being released like anything. And what is the remedy given? Well, the fora under the COPRA have the power to remove the goods, replace the goods, return the money, compensate for the suffering, discontinue any practice, and even it has the power to direct withdrawal of hazardous goods. And it also added a new feather in its cap, product liability. There is a provision for product liability. But in all these cases, someone has to bell the cat. Who has to bell the cat? In fact, many of the consumer voluntary groups are not fully aware that they can use these provisions also as a class action. Therefore, we expect an individual consumer to go to a court or to the consumer fora. In fact, I went to court way back in 2001, and still the case has not come for hearing. It is pending before the High Court of West Bengal. For 20 years, I have been waiting because I was duped to purchase a desktop by a wonderful advertisement on the front page of Hindu newspaper. So, getting an effective remedy, getting a cheap remedy, getting a timely remedy is a distant cry as far as India is concerned. As far as our legal system is concerned, it's very unfortunate, but then let us hope things will change in the near future. When you come to endorsement, the celebrities are endorsing, and even common people, ordinary people posing as housewives and employees are also endorsing some products. And when a celebrity endorses, depending upon the product or service that is endorsed, well, I'm sure in 99.99 of the endorsements that were made, there was never any testing done by him. There was never any trial done by him. And there was never any tasting done by him. Yet, without any reservation, he goes and says that so-and-so product is good, and because of the following that is there for celebrities, well, he is able to get away by making any statement. I am not naming any particular celebrity, but then we all know who are those celebrities, and false claims are always part of life. Now, friends, coming to the second aspect, awareness. So the three instances when an ordinary consumer can go to a court for redressal to the loss that is caused to him is either when there is a defect in goods, or when there is a deficiency of service, or when there is a deceit in promotion of goods and services called unfair trade practices. When we come to the awareness part, inclusion of consumer education as part of civil education to citizens never found a place in the entire Indian scenario, either before independence or even after independence. And business and manufacturing communities, most of them don't have ethics code, and they don't have a document which lays down the rules to be followed, the practices to be followed by the fair trade associations. Besides these two not being there, there is a danger lurking behind. The danger is developed alliance between the stakeholders, especially the manufacturer, probably the bureaucracy, and not even discarding the consumer voluntary groups. Added to that, we have a docile press which doesn't find any time to talk about these matters. Madam Shri was telling us that there were many regulations made by the Central Consumer Protection Authority. Have they ever been published in local language in any of the papers which are circulated in the regional level? No. Because that is a social service which the press people have to do. And why do they lose their income by publishing this information? And then when somebody initiates any step, there is discouragement all around. So development of alliance, docile press, and discouragement from the community, especially members of one's own family, of the consumer. It is our fate, let's not worry. Why go there? No guarantee that you are going to get a remedy. You have to invest money. And the mediation case which Madam pointed out, which the Suresh has pointed out, that if he has to pay to the mediation also, then I'm sure how it can be called a cheap remedy, and how it can be called a remedy that can be given a timely remedy. So the only option left is the individuals, especially the young generation who are going to face and inherit this world where enforcement is the problem, inaction is the disease, and unfortunately, there is no cure for them. So I request the youngsters, the members of the students in the college, and the members of the community that please make sure that you have a center for consumer studies or consumer protection in your own college. And as you go out for outreach activities as part of the extracurricular activity of the college, please focus your outreach activity on the consumer problems for the purpose of educating them and also help them in filing the complaint if they can't file on their own. In fact, there are many law students who have filed PIL on much more graver issues. Now, I'm sure a small deficiency of service is definitely within the reach of any law student, and he will be doing greatest service to the community by undertaking this kind of outreach program. Leaflets and consumer clubs can be formed. Consumer clubs can be formed, and leaflet can be prepared in the simplest possible language, in the regional language, which is understood by the people in a village. Go to the village, circulate them, talk to them, and help them in getting remedy for whatever deficiency of service which they unfortunately received or whatever defective goods that were supplied to them. Therefore, ABC is to be remembered forever. Be angry about things that are wrong in our society. Be brave to stand up, speak out, and to do things. And be competent by acquiring the necessary skill. If people are asleep, awaken them. If the people fear to act, give them courage by taking the first step yourself. Well, this entire webinar started with the statement, even a 1,000-mile journey must commence with the first step. I'm sure that's what Anjali madam has said. Well, the first step should be taken by you. Don't expect somebody else will come and help you. You have to take the initial step. Now, when we talk of policy, the object of the policy must be, whoever prepares a policy document or a policy sentence, the object must be to raise the level of consumer awareness to a level achieved in developed countries. There must be yardstick. That yardstick is the awareness level in developed countries. Make the providers of services and producers of goods responsive to the needs of the consumers. Hoarding is one very, very grave incidents in Indian society. But this also need to be addressed by the policymaker. Aspiration for our country to play a lead role, not only in developing world, but also in the international scene. In other words, if you ask me what should be the policy of the Consumer Protection Act, it is to prevent injustice in the marketplace. And if possible, to cure the injustice that happened in the marketplace. We have a consumer mediation cell, and as an individual consumer, to the upcoming youth, I have 7 points to bring to your notice. Join and support any consumer movement. Follow the advice given by the consumer groups. Cooperate with the consumer groups. Write to your local people representatives about the problem relating to goods or services, or the measures that must be taken at the government level. Write to the press. And most important, cut out unnecessary purchases and organize alternative economic units like cooperative societies so that the deficiency of goods, deficiency of services and defect in goods can undoubtedly be checked. And the greatest success of Consumer Protection Act is its invocation to the least. And there was one statement made that the consumer fora power has been reduced from a claim of 1 crore to 50 lakhs. My humble submission, let me share my personal opinion. Nowadays, a common man, if he purchases a flat, well, I am sure no flat he will be able to get for less than 50 lakhs in any urban or in any A or B category cities. If he is compelled to go to state commission for this purpose, I think it is an indirect way of stating better not to go to consumer forum. The fear that the National Commission may not be able to get any cases, I think, is to be really looked into. The purpose of the Consumer Protection Act is not to feed the National Consumer Forum or National Consumer Commission, but to see that the consumer is given the least, is given the best opportunity by providing the least possible trouble and trauma to him to get the redress for any defect or deficiency in service which he unfortunately has faced. Undoubtedly, COPRA 2019 is a good step in right direction. No second opinion about that, because it talks about product liability. But then, who is going to enforce it? There must be some organization which can suo moto take up and see that the litigation or the settlement process is initiated. This is one important aspect which must be looked into, because expecting an individual consumer to go to the consumer fora for getting redress, I think in most of the cases is on the high side. And consumer groups, they play a major part in awareness, improving the awareness. They may play even an active part in helping a consumer, but I'm sure most of the consumer organizations are not in a position to file a case, a class action on behalf of a class of consumers. This is the ground reality. Therefore, in the light of this ground reality, I for one feel that the Ministry of Consumer Affairs must come out with a policy statement first. And to implement that policy statement, Consumer Fora or Consumer Protection Act or COPRA is one tool. It is not the tool. It is not the only tool. It is one tool. And they have to also think of other measures for implementing the same. With this, I would only say, let us hope that in future, in a short time from today, efforts will be taken to make people realize, the manufacturers, the distributors, the traders, the retailers, and the sellers realize that Consumer Protection Act is not merely a COPRA, but it is a COBRA. There is a COBRA that is wishing to prevent the defects in goods and deficiency in service, and if it happens, it is there to bite. Once that fear is instilled in the minds of the manufacturers, the dealers, the traders, and the sellers, then I'm sure the Consumer Protection Act can claim that its avowed purpose is served. Well, I'm sure with the help of these so many consumer voluntary groups, if young people join their hands with them, there will definitely be a day, not far off, but very close by, when the COPRA becomes a COBRA. Thank you very much for a very patient hearing, and I'm grateful to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing wonderful experiences and knowledge. And I am sure it will be helpful in our near future. So now, moving further, we are open for question answer session. So I request all the participants. So if you have any question, then you can raise your voice here and ask the question. Yes, Deepak. Deepak, sir, you can ask.
Yes, main problem is that in consumer product, sort of the price of the product is very small, and against they cannot fight against the global companies and high, because the company have a bare expense by them, and only consumer for the product of the 1,000 rupees or 5,000 rupees, they cannot go before the court, because this is ultimately he have a very large expense should be paid. So there is some system or machinery should in FMCG product. It is not beneficial for the consumer to fight against the company. The way he is right.
No, there is a beautiful saying that if you can't fight, you suffer. I'm sorry to say this, but then when a grievance takes place, the redressal mechanism has to be set in force. That's why I used one word called fate. We say it is our fate and we never go to court, because probably the expense for going to the forum will be much more than the loss that is suffered. In that case, well, nobody can give any remedy.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone who have question? Okay, I think there is nobody. So yes, Aditya Tripathi, you can ask directly.
Sir, as you said, so far as the consumer is concerned, if someone is aggrieved by any product, by any advertisement or anything, they have to personally approach the consumer forums, be the district level, state level, or national level. But is it not somewhere responsibility of the writ courts as well, the constitutional courts? Whenever required, they are taking the calls, issuing the writs on their own, that the suo motu writs. But these advertisements are also witnessed by those judges, the honorable judges sitting at the apex court or the honorable high courts. And they are well aware about all these practices going across the market. So does not it fall under their responsibility as well to take necessary action or issue necessary writs for the same?
A very, very interesting question you're asking.
So
A very interesting question you're asking. Well, as I said, there is no duty to speak truth. In India, the trader need not speak truth at all. He can happily suppress the facts which are detriment to the consumer and only project those facts which are favorable to him. Well, let me give you an example. Using our toothpaste twice daily will help you to fight tooth decay. This is a beautiful tagline of an advertisement. Using twice daily. How much? The brush is shown in the advertisement. The entire paste must cover the brush part. And it must be used twice regularly. That means at the appointed time. And it will help you. Remember, they never say that it removes the tooth decay. It says it will only help you in fighting the tooth. You are fighting. So if your fight is not proper, then the paste will not be helping you at all, but the sale of the paste will be helping the manufacturer. I try to understand what is meant by whiter than whitest. I don't know. I'm an intellectual fool. Therefore, it's very difficult to understand. These are the beautiful sentences which can be understood only by those people who are preparing the advertisements. but nobody else can understand because they don't want you to understand. Because if you understand, you won't purchase. Have you ever imagined Amitabh Bachchan sitting on a scooter at the age of 70 and driving it and saying this is very smooth? It is preposterous. But then that is being shown and we are purchasing it. Because we follow the people blindly. We have faith in some people. And it is that faith that is being exploited by the trader. No. If you trust somebody, then that fellow can betray your trust. If you don't trust anybody, there is nothing to betray. So somewhere there must be a responsibility. And in India, please remember, there is no censorship for advertisements. We have a regulatory code by the Doordarshan, by AIR, by the press, and we also have a voluntary body called Advertising Standards Council of India. But it can only direct those traders which are its members. It can't direct those that are not its members. Therefore, I am a trader, I don't become a member. Therefore, Advertising Standards Council of India will have no jurisdiction over me. I mean, these are all, unfortunately, a vicious circle. And once you are caught as a clog in the wheel, you have to move with it. And that's exactly what is happening.
I would like to add that we have CCPA, Central Consumer Protection Authority, which is supposed to take proactive measures to save consumers from misleading ads. So they are supposed to act immediately when they see a misleading ad. But they do act occasionally, but it's not enough. And they don't act against big sharks. They don't act against big sharks. They only act against the small people.
Madam, small fish get always caught. Big fish can never.
Yes. So big stars they continue advertising junk food, they continue advertising gutka, they continue advertising fruit juice, which has no juice, no real fruit juice. So they continue doing all kinds of things and nobody catches them.
In fact, there are many statutes
but
where...
statutorily, as per act, they are empowered to do it.
Because, ma'am, as a matter of fact, like apart from the things I have read or gone across, like I'm using one of the cars by an Indian made. They are giving me a sticker, like while I purchase that car, that you are driving India's safest car. I met an accident a year ago. My car was upside down and the airbag did not open.
Okay.
I was wearing my seatbelt and everything was on. I made a complaint, I made the representation and things on and on. Now, majority of the big companies, they're having the panel advocates, those who are regularly appearing, the rates are coming, the metal is going on and on for some other reason. But yes, as you said, that these big sharks or big companies, they take it very mechanically that these complaints are coming and they will keep coming and we will keep dealing with them as a matter of as how it works. But yes, so far as in this huge population of 140 or 50 crores now, they hardly are concerned about the consumers per se. But thank you so much for that.
First time you need to be concerned about yourself. If you make well-informed decisions, when you buy a product, see all the details, don't get misled, read the label, read in between the lines, know the truth, compare products, see reviews, genuine reviews, then you are less likely to be misled or deceived. So you are there to save your interest.
Our diligence, yeah.
Yeah.
When you purchase a car, they must have given you a book.
Yes, sir.
Turning into some 350 pages small print. Have you ever cared to read it?
Sir, it's humanly, I agree.
I'm not finding fault with you. I also do it, you also do it, we don't read. But somewhere there will be one sentence which will be exempting them from the liability.
It is so, sir. Agree. I totally agree. I bow down. And that is what is happening, sir. And it is impossible because even if we buy an earphone, they are giving a booklet of this small book. you need a magnifying lens for the same. No one is going to read them all. So that is where that's the catch, actually, can say.
You're real.
That's the catch. That's the catch.
So you have to be careful.
That's
See, people say buyer beware has been replaced by seller beware. No. In fact, the standard of buyer behavior has gone up. You have to be much more careful. Because they say the what you call the airbags will open only when the car runs beyond one speed. If you travel below that speed, it won't open.
it won't open. And sir, I so far as I understand that once you get into litigation, I'm into litigation personally, but the preponderance things and beyond reasonable doubt thing, it's impossible to prove there that I met all the criteria to gain what should have been given to me. So at the length, when you go to litigation, things are haywired, of course.
You're right. So when the lawyers come into picture, we make sure no case is ever decided unless we get the proper benefit.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much, all of you. So, moving further, I would like to end with a quotation: be a smart consumer and know your rights. Showing gratitude is the simply yet most powerful things human can do for each other. So, for that, I invite Miss Nikita Rohit for vote of thanks.
Good evening, respected distinguished guests, Dr. Rekha ma'am, Dr. Amit sir, Dr. PVVS Murthy sir, faculty members and technical team, and my dear friends, students. It is my privilege to extend a sincere word of thanks to all of you for making today's webinar a successful. On behalf of Anand Law College and Anand College of Legal Studies, I would like to express our heartfelt thanks to our keynote speaker, Professor V. Keshava Rao sir, Professor Suresh Mishra sir, and Dr. Shri Gupta ma'am for their valuable insights and informative sessions. Your expertise has truly enriched our understanding of the topic. Thank you so much to all keynote speakers. A heartfelt thanks to Dr. PVVS Murthy sir for gracing the event with your presence and support. I would also like to thank Dr. Rekha Kumari Singh ma'am and Dr. Amit Kumar Parmar sir for their constant encouragement and support. A sincere thanks to Dr. Anjali Parmar ma'am for a wonderful anchoring and all the faculty members, technical team and social media team for their efforts and support. A special thanks to the students for your active participation, which made this event more engaging. Once again, thank you all for your valuable contribution. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much
Thank
once
you.
again.
Pleasure
Thank you,
being
ma'am.
part of it.
Thank you, Nikita madam. Now
Thank you very much.
it's my humble request to all rise up for our national anthem. Over to you, sir.
पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल गंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जयकार
Thank you so much for everyone for joining us today, and have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you all.
Thank you.